Linkin Park is making a comeback with a new singer, and the Black Dahlia murder is releasing their new album with a new singer. One of these comebacks has been controversial, while the other highly celebrated. This got me thinking about other bands who have replaced their lead singers in the past and what factors were involved in the reception from the audience. I'll analyze those bands, those factors, and then I'll use that analysis to predict the future for Linkin Park and the Black Dahlia murder. Let's talk about it. Welcome, metalheads. I'm the host of Heavy Metal Philosophy and writer for Metal Digest, Jon Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's riff of the week. First off, rest in peace to Chester Bennington and Trevor Sturnod, and God bless the Black Dahlia murder. All right, to figure this one out, I made a big list of huge bands who have replaced their lead singer in the past, and I looked for patterns. And what I came away with is there's 4 trajectories that a band can take after they replace their lead singer. The first trajectory, the first category, are bands that should just stop and move on with their lives. There's no way that they could ever continue. The first example that comes to mind is Nirvana. Imagine a world where Dave Grohl and Chris Novoselic had hired a replacement singer. Maybe it's a lack of imagination on my part, but I just can't envision a universe where Nirvana would continue on and still be Nirvana. Even with the uber-talented Babymaker on drums, it seems to me that Kurt was Nirvana. To me, this would be like if Type O Negative moved on without Peter Steele, or Soundgarden without Chris Cornell. Another great example of bands who stopped after foundational members died: Bolt Thrower, Led Zeppelin, and Motorhead. Sometimes it just wouldn't be right. But I understand why many bands want to try. It's one of the hardest things in the world to make it big in the music industry. Then to try to have to start over and do it again from scratch, it seems impossible. And the death of that member isn't the band member's fault. But there's another factor as well. What if you love your remaining bandmates and you don't want to form a new band? So that's why I think what Joy Division did was so cool, because after their lead singer died, they formed a new band with the remaining members called New Order, and that allowed Joy Division to remain what it was forever. Another great example is Rage Against the Machine. After their lead singer and them split apart, they formed Audioslave with Chris Cornell. You still got the same band members, but because there's a new singer, there's going to be a new direction and a new sound. Because changing singers will change the band almost always. Now, there are examples where it worked really well, and we're going to get to that later on. But for now, let's move to the second trajectory a band can take. Some bands change singers, and they're just seen as having different eras. Black Sabbath is the perfect example of this. To this day, fans will debate online which era was the best. Was it Ozzy? Was it Dio? Was it Tony Martin? And this is especially true now that there's a whole generation of fans who weren't even alive during their run. As for me, I'm Team Ozzy, in case you were wondering. Some fans adore the Dio era, and I totally get that. Who's cooler than Ronnie James Dio? No one. And I've seen a lot of love for Tony Martin in my comments section. Totally respect that. For me personally, it's not just about the singer. Bill Ward and Geezer Butler are, to me, unequivocally the greatest rhythm section in all of rock and roll. And so any album without both of those players on it is just not going to have that magic to me. Hence why I'm an Ozzy era guy, not fully because of Ozzy, but because of the chemistry that all 4 of them had together. Other great examples in this category would be Arch Enemy and Killswitch Engage. Now, I think most of you would agree with me. I love the Angela and the Howard Jones eras the most, respectively. But the Alyssa era of Arch Enemy has been pretty great, and the return of Jesse Leach to Killswitch has been awesome. And also, these bands still have foundational original members like Michael Amott for Arch Enemy and Adam for Killswitch Engage that keeps them sounding like themselves. And that leads me to the third trajectory a band can have when they try to do it and it just doesn't work. The 2 best examples in my mind are Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. Now, I'm sure there's going to be people in the comments section coming to the defense of Blaze Bayley and Ripper Owens, and that's great. All due respect to them. But I think we should all agree that those two bands are best with Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford. Other examples that come to mind are Van Halen and Stone Temple Pilots. Now I know there's a lot of fans of the Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen. God bless Gary Cherone, sorry you were the forgotten one. But I think Stone Temple Pilots would be less controversial. Ironically, it was Chester Bennington that first replaced Scott when he was fired from the band, and he seemed like a good fit. It seemed like that was really gonna work, but he eventually quit Stone Temple Pilots so he could put his full focus on Linkin Park. And it's important to note that Stone Temple Pilots is one of my favorite bands of all time, and it gives me no pleasure to say this. The DeLeo brothers are masters that I highly respect, but to me, the Jeff Gutt era it'll never be as powerful as the original lineup, and there's nothing wrong with that. Bands don't have to stay peaked for their entire careers. Bands who haven't replaced members don't even do that usually. So now let's talk about the fourth and final trajectory, the fourth category, when bands absolutely knock it out of the park. No one thought that AC/DC would ever be the same again after Bon Scott died, and then Back in Black wound up being one of the greatest rock and roll albums of all time. Every now and again, a band just crushes it. Another great example is Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpse ranks up there to me with AC/DC as a band who's been able to pull it off at the highest level and be just as powerful as they were before, if not more. But notice, there aren't nearly as many examples of bands that fit into this category. Brian Johnson and Corpse Grinder are both generational talents. When we're talking about bands with important legacies like this, it would take the most prodigious of artists to fill those shoes, or in the case of Corpse Grinder, even surpass them. And also, again, with these bands, I think they have foundational members still in the band that keep the sound true. Angus Young for AC/DC, and Paul, Alex, and Rob for Cannibal Corpse. So which of these four categories will Linkin Park and the Black Dahlia murder fit into? Well, only time will tell, but I'm going to make an educated guess here. I think Linkin Park is going to fit in the eras category. I think it's going to be the Chester versus the Emily era debate forever. I think Linkin Park will go on to have success in the future. It'll just be a different kind. Linkin Park has long been one of the most popular metal bands at the time of this recording, with 54.9 monthly Spotify listeners, and they're one of the most influential of their generation along with Deftones. There are so many fans hoping for their success that it's basically their game to lose at this point. But there is a sizable section of the fan base that will never accept Emily, whether it's because of her history with Scientology, which seemingly goes against everything that Chester stood for, or maybe just because she's not Chester. And then there's the fact that it's going to be the most challenging feat in the world to write material that lives up to Meteora and Hybrid Theory. So what about the Black Dahlia murder? Well, I'm far more confident in my prediction for them. I think they're going to crush it. I think that they're going to be an example that bands in the future look to when they have to deal with similar situations. And while the Black Dahlia murder isn't nearly as popular as Linkin Park, Trevor was one of the most beloved figures in all of metal and the metal community. And yet somehow it seems like they are doing this in the most honorable way possible. And I'm not alone in that assessment. Just look at the comment section under their video for their new single, Aftermath. This one says, "Thank y'all for continuing this band against all odds." This other comment says, "The whole idea of Brian not giving up this legacy, but instead taking it up and moving on is insane. It's so inspiring, and I'm proud that TBDM lives on. The track rips AF." And this one says, "I don't think there's ever been a better example of a band dealing with tragedy head on and in the classiest way possible. What a powerhouse this band is, and what a ripper this song turned out to be. Love you all." This comment really sums it up. The best part about this is that this is still the Black Dahlia murder. They didn't grab a new guy off the street to do vocals or guitar. They brought a classic member of the band back into the group. It works so well. This comment says, I couldn't imagine anything worse than losing not only your best friend, but the man who gave your music a voice. The song made me cry. Rest in peace, Trevor, and all hail the Black Dahlia murder. And I love this comment. Trevor would be proud of Brian and the band for keeping the train moving. Rest in peace, Trevor. Your band is in good hands, brother. I think this one's a common sentiment. Bro, when the camera zoomed in on Ryan shredding side by side with Brandon, I welled up. Love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. This means so much to so many of us. Look at other YouTube comment sections. Now, thankfully, 99% of mine are pretty cool thanks to awesome people like you, but traditionally, it's been seen that YouTube is only rivaled by Reddit and Twitter for its toxicity. Yet look at the Black Dahlia murder and this overwhelming reception. So why do I think they're doing so well when other bands haven't? Well, I think it's two factors, and one of them is empathy towards the band. I don't think any of us can imagine the kind of pain that they're going through, and we're all hoping for their success. We're cheering for this band. We want them to succeed, and we want Trevor's legacy to live on. The other factor is the absolutely brilliant move that they made. They moved an existing and original member into the lead singer spot. They didn't bring in an outsider to, quote, replace Trevor. There is no replacing Trevor. However, it doesn't get much more authentic than Brian. Brian is an entrenched part of the band and the community. And it doesn't hurt that his vocals are excellent either. There's no doubt in my mind that the Black Dahlia murder is going to crush this comeback. And that's why I'm picking Aftermath for the riff of the week. Long live the Black Dahlia murder. Read philosophy. Listen to metal. I love you.